Have you ever just looked at politics and thought, none of this makes any sense? The choices seem weird, the outcomes even weirder. Well, get ready because in the next few minutes, we're going to pull back the curtain on the secret logic behind it all, and I promise you are never going to look at an election the same way again. Okay, let's kick things off with a mystery that I'm sure you've noticed. You've got two candidates, right? One from each party, and they're supposed to be polar opposites. But as you get closer and closer to election day, they start to sound, well, kind of the same. Why is that? It is absolutely not a coincidence, and you're not imagining it. There is a powerful, almost invisible force at play, and we're about to break it down.
So the key that unlocks this whole puzzle is something called public choice theory. Now, don't let the fancy names scare you off. The idea is actually brilliantly simple. What if we looked at politicians and voters using the exact same playbook economists use for shoppers and businesses? The core idea is simple, but it's a game changer. People are people. We're all driven by self-interest, whether we're picking out cereal at the grocery store or picking a president in the voting booth.
So let's do it. Let's put on these economic glasses and take a fresh look at the world of politics. This theory basically says the political arena is just another kind of marketplace. Instead of consumers, we're voters. Instead of businesses, you have politicians and bureaucrats. And the main motivation, that driving force for everyone involved, yep, you guessed it, self-interest. Now, that might sound cynical, but it's a powerful idea. It suggests politicians aren't always aiming for some noble public good. Instead, they're just rational players in a very, very high-stakes game. And look, this isn't just some fringe idea. The guy who pioneered it, James Buchanan, won a Nobel Prize for it. This quote really hits the nail on the head. We're just taking a toolkit that's proven to work for understanding the market and applying it to how we make decisions as a group, in government and in elections. All right, so let's apply this economic lens to the most basic political act there is, casting your vote. If we're being cold, hard, and rational about it, does it even make sense to vote? Public choice theory treats this like a business decision. So, on one side, you've got the benefit. That's the reward, how much better your life would be if your candidate wins, times the probability that your one vote is the one that actually decides the whole thing. On the other side of the scale are the costs, and these are very real. The time it takes to go to the polls, maybe taking off work, and all the effort to get informed in the first place. So the equation is simple. A purely rational, self-interested person should only vote if the expected benefit is bigger than the cost. Seems pretty logical, right? Well, here's the kicker. That P, the probability your vote is the tiebreaker, is just unbelievably small. In a big national election, it's about 1 in 60 million. You are literally more likely to be struck by lightning. So even if your candidate winning was worth $1 million to you, the expected benefit from your one vote is pennies. When you weigh that against the real cost of your time and effort, from a purely economic standpoint, voting looks kind of irrational. But obviously, millions of people do vote. We're driven by things like civic duty, passion, or just wanting to be part of something. But when we all cast those votes, you'd think majority rule would give us a clear, stable answer. Well, as public choice theory shows us, sometimes even that simple idea can completely fall apart. So let's picture a small town trying to decide on school funding. They've got 3 choices: high, medium, or low, each with a different tax rate. And we've got 3 equal-sized groups of voters: parents, who obviously want high funding; elders, who are on fixed incomes and want low taxes; and young couples, who are looking for a reasonable middle ground. Okay, so if they vote on the options 2 at a time, what happens? Well, low funding beats high funding, medium beats high, and medium also beats low. Boom, we have a clear winner. Medium funding is the town's choice. Everything works just like you'd expect. Simple. But what happens if we just change the priorities of one of those groups just a tiny bit? Let's say we swap out the elders for a group of parents who are thinking about sending their kids to private school. Now, this new group thinks a little differently. Their top choice is low funding, so they can save money for that private school. But if they're gonna be stuck with public schools, they want them to be amazing. So high funding is their second choice. They hate the middle. Now let's run the votes again. Low still beats high, okay? But wait, now high beats medium, and medium still beats low. Uh-oh, what just happened? We're completely stuck in a loop. The town prefers low over high, but they prefer high over medium, but they prefer medium over low. There is no winner.
This is called a voting paradox or a cycle. The will of the people is totally incoherent, even though every single voter has perfectly logical preferences. It's crazy.
And this isn't just some cute little brain teaser. This actually points to a deep, fundamental mathematical crack in the very idea of voting. Yeah, that crazy loop we just saw, it has a name: Arrow's impossibility theorem. And it is a mind-bending mathematical proof that basically says it's impossible to design a voting system that is both fair and always guaranteed to produce a single, logical group decision. That cycle isn't a bug. It's a feature of democracy itself.
So, how does society function at all then? Well, Arrow said there are really only two ways out of this paradox. The first is, a dictatorship. One person decides for everyone. Not a great option. The other out is if we assume that most voters' preferences follow a certain more normal pattern. The paradox only happened because that one group had weird preferences. They liked the two extremes, high and low, but not the middle. Most of us have what are called single-peaked preferences. Think of it like a mountain. You have one ideal outcome, your peak, and the further you get from it in any direction, the less you like it. When most voters think that way, the paradox just disappears.
And that one assumption, that most of us have those single-peaked preferences, is the key to the final piece of our puzzle. And it's the answer to the question we asked at the very beginning. This brings us to the incredibly powerful median voter theorem. What it says is that in most elections, where voters are spread out along a line from left to right, and they have those single-peaked preferences, the winning position isn't on the far left or the far right. The winner will almost always be the one that captures the heart of the person smack dab in the middle, the median voter. Just picture it. You have two candidates, A and B. If candidate A stays way over on the left, candidate B can easily win by just moving a little bit to the right of the middle, grabbing that median voter and everyone to the right. So what does candidate A have to do to have a chance? They have no choice but to also move toward the center. It becomes a strategic game where both candidates are pulled like a magnet toward that one all-important voter in the middle. And there you have it. That's the secret logic. The reason candidates start out way on the fringes to win their party's primary and then suddenly pivot to the center for the general election isn't because they're flaky or have no principles. It's because they are playing the game rationally, competing for the vote of the single most powerful person in any election, the median voter. So let's wrap up this whirlwind tour. The big takeaways are we can look at politics just like economics. The simple act of voting, when you really break it down, might not be rational in a strict cost-benefit way. Democracy itself can sometimes lead to bizarre cyclical results. And finally, there is this powerful gravitational pull that drags political outcomes right to the center. And all this leaves us with one last really important question to chew on. If the entire political system is basically a race to please the person in the middle, what does that mean for everybody else? What happens to the ideas, the passions, and the people out there on the edges? And that's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.